right, guys, got my buddy David Denney here. I think is it the world's best attorney? Is it the universe's best? What are you going by now?
Oh, no, they didn't even make a coffee mug that says that.
Okay, we'll go with world's best. World's best attorney. So David is the president of the Greater Dallas Restaurant Association, works with a ton of restaurants that have been hit arguably harder or as hard as any business out there can claim to have been hit. So you've got a unique perspective, and like you've been dealing with a lot of people that have just they've lost their businesses entirely or certainly not making any money, furloughed people, laid folks off, permanent closures, all of that stuff. Yeah, the point of the show, as we were talking about before, is just any positive things that are popping up in people's behaviors and their mindset, either in yourself or just with a lot of these restaurant owners out there. So is there anything that comes to mind, just any anecdotes about what you're seeing right now in a community that's been hit really hard?
You know, so there have been so many inspirational moves in the last month. Literally, it's just been today's the 20th of April. So I call March 15th the beginning of the dark time. That was a Sunday. March 16th was really the first day of the darkness, because that's when the restaurant industry was literally fighting to make sure the governor did not close all restaurants completely to keep people safe. And it was a 48-hour fight to plead with city, state, county leadership to not just put all the restaurants into darkness. And the reason they couldn't do that is because restaurants prior to March 16th, they supplied 52% of the meals served in the country. So the grocery stores wouldn't have been able to handle that load. But since then, oh my gosh. So March 16th was a Monday. And even in that week, we saw some people by that Friday, by the 20th, furlough all their employees, put hundreds of people into unemployment, turn off the lights, hold on to their cash, and just so they would hopefully be able to come out of this. And then the flip side of that coin is we've seen people who weren't ever ready to do takeout or delivery. They weren't even set up for that. They were finer dining, and they turned on a dime and adapted in 2 days, figured out the new TABC rules about how you can sell to-go alcohol, which was a really cool step by the governor, which we've never literally had since the history of time in Texas is to-go alcohol from restaurants. And people have adapted to that. And the adaptation is the inspiration, because they could have just said, well, this really stinks. I guess I'll go do something different with my life. And it's been amazing. And so I'll give you a couple of examples. So the first week, my office got called. So everybody was working from home already. I'm here at the office, but I'm alone. So that means I'm more socially distanced than anybody else. And frankly, I will tell you, if I was working from home, my wife would have smothered me with a pillow about 3 weeks ago. So this is a safe space for me. This is the best place for me to be. But so two different groups, Justin and Diane Fortin from the Pecan Lodge called us and said, we're starting a nonprofit. And Elias Pope and the 80/20 Hospitality Group, who have HG Supply and Hero and Standard Service and a really big, I wouldn't call it an empire, but a really large hospitality group, they said, we're going to start a nonprofit. By Friday, March 20th, both those nonprofits were formed and being funded. And so the Fortin started the Dinner Bell Foundation to provide meals to hospital workers and first responders, and to help restaurants by not only providing them financial assistance, but allowing people to order food for the first responders through some of these restaurants that have been harder hit. That's pretty amazing. And then Elias's group, called DFW Eats, is taking food from suppliers and feeding laid off and furloughed hospitality workers who don't have a paycheck coming in. In a matter of days, in a matter of hours, those plans were laid and executed between Monday, when the darkness fell, and that first Friday when we still didn't know any of the rules. It was awesome.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And we talked earlier too about Furlough Kitchen with Randy DeWitt. It's not just one person. It seems like it's this collective awakening of so many of these operators that are coming together. They're sharing ideas, they're partnering. It's cool to see kind of competitors come together. And have you seen any of that with people that have kind of reached their hand out in a way, even maybe on your side as attorneys, where competition is kind of just broken down completely and everyone banding together?
So the hospitality industry specifically is one of the most competition-free industries. You can have people immediately next door to each other, striving to get the same food dollar from the same demographic, and they still work together, because if you have sort of the trifecta of a burger place, a hamburger place, a taco place, a pizza place, okay, that was four, that's not a trifecta, that's a quadrifecta. You know what I mean? That makes a vibrant trade area, so they tend to work together. And people in hospitality, by their very nature, hospitality, the root derives from love of strangers, hospital, hospice, that's what that means. So they're always pretty giving toward one another. And when this happened, I mean, I've seen people, I saw, so one of my clients started this sort of take-home meal kit, and it wasn't prepared food to take away, it was raw food, and then I'm gonna get online that night and teach you how to cook it. And so one of my other clients who's friends with her said, well, oh, I don't know how to do the label on food, I'm just gonna call her. And then they ended up putting their labeling on the packages. We had some input into that just to make sure it was okay. But of course, they're just reaching out to each other daily. And seeing these guys do take and bake meal kits, online cooking classes, cooking shows, trying to have fun with it. There's one of our clients, Uno, with Red Sticks Asian Street Food. She has done a show online, Facebook and Instagram Live every night of this deal. She's in the 20s now. She's been doing it since March 16th, 17th. And she's just having fun with it. The cocktails get a little stronger every episode, you know? And I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You have to stay connected with your people somehow. And she had just opened that restaurant a few weeks ago. I mean, this is the worst possible thing that could happen to a restaurant that's a month old.
Yeah. Oh man, that's cool. That's cool. Crazy.
So I've been, for a while, I've been listening to a podcast by Mike Glover. It's Fieldcraft Survival. And it's amazing and inspirational. And he's a former Green Beret and CIA guy. And he always talks about how the acronym for planning is PACE. And PACE is your primary plan, your alternate plan, your contingency plan, your emergency plan. And we're in a situation now where none of those four things even apply. We're so far beyond emergency plan that people are just, it's kind of like the Wild West, but people are just doing what they got to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'll drop the first expletive, I think, on all of the 40, 50 shows. It's your oh shit. That's it. That's right after the E on PACE.
So I didn't want to inflict this on you, but my standard Zoom background is a picture of a burning dumpster.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
Flaming hot dumpster fire, because this is a CodeRed dumpster fire, and we're in the 5th week of it. And people are scared, and people are nervous, and I end up having the same conversation with eight or 10 times a day about. First it was, well, what do I do for delivery? And then it was, how do I navigate the TABC rules, our alcoholic beverage rules? And then it was, well, how do I apply for the PPP money? And then it was, well, now I didn't get the PPP money. Now what do I do? Or even crazier, well, I got the PPP money. Now what do I do? I mean, the same conversation with the same set of people with the same set of concerns. And, I mean, that's how I'm spending my time. It's not like we can bill people for that.
Well, so people call you and they expect you to give them answers and give them, if not answers, give them certainty, right? They're like, hey, David, what's going to happen? What should I do? What does the next couple of weeks look like? For all those people that are in this, we talked earlier pre-show on this fight, flight, or freeze mode where what do I do, right? And you're probably that person is the one that's giving you a call going, what do I do now? I know each situation's different, but do you have some kind of generic advice for a business owner right now that is closed? Let's say they've received some PPP money what should they be doing to positively shift and set up for reopening right now?
It's a good question. So last Thursday, I had a guy call me and he said, okay, I have the paperwork for this PPP money, but I don't have all the loan documents and I want to read them. And I said, this morning, the fund ran out of money. Send that in. Get the money now. Just get it. We will figure out how to deploy that money in the next couple weeks. Just get it. So if you have it, you are so far ahead of the curve against the millions of small businesses that haven't gotten it yet. And as of this morning, it'll hopefully, by the time you broadcast this and post it, the PPP will be funded again with $300 more billion, so that small businesses can get after some of that. But if you have it and you're dark, then work out a strategy with your accountant, and maybe sort of your payroll processing people about make sure you know how to calculate forgiveness of that money, because as everybody knows, 25% of it can be used for rent, utilities, mortgage payment on your business. So you need to put that. What I did is I'm recommending that people put it into, if you don't have a separate account, then specifically allocate for it, create a new spreadsheet or a set of spreadsheets where you can identify every dollar. If you have employees that make over $100,000 a year, you need to make sure that that money that you pay them is subject to a cap. So some of that won't be forgivable. So make sure you have a good idea of how that forgiveness is going to work for you. And that way you can start to plan. Because the first week of this whole crisis time, and this is, I don't usually speak in hyperbole, but this is a full-blown 4-alarm crisis. The first week, people were talking about how they were going to sit down and make a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day plan. Well, I got through the first 30 days of this, and I hadn't had time to sit down and make a 30-day plan, so that was gone. And now we all know, we don't really know what the rules are. We don't know what recovery is going to look like. So it's kind of dumb to make a 90-day plan because we don't know how guests are going to be allowed back in our businesses. You don't yet know the rules for your business. You don't know if you're going to have reduced staff. We don't know if restaurants are going to be allowed to have, I doubt they're going to be allowed to have full dining room capacity at the beginning, which isn't going to change their fixed costs. The rent's going to be the same. Landlords, some of the landlords have been very cool, and some of the landlords have been really, really uncool. And so I'll stick with the theme of reduce profanity and say super, super uncool about things. So if you're in that
I know what you meant, though.
Yeah. Let's all just take whatever the worst word it is and put it in there for landlords, because a lot of these landlords have been really bad. But if you're in a situation where you're dark and you're trying to figure out how to deploy PPP money, talk to your landlords about, can you go to a percentage rent? Can I make my rent a percentage of sales? How am I gonna face the next 6 months? Because if the polls are right, and they're not always right, and they're always a little bit right, and people are not looking at coming back into the public in droves, then how do you deal with your fixed cost, your variable costs? The best thing that's going to come out of this, Ben, is people will have taken a really hard look at their how they spend money, and they're going to find during this period of austerity, they're going to find a lot of expenses they didn't need. I mean, the first week I was canceling magazine subscriptions just in case.
Yeah.
To save $30 a year, just in case. I was set up for some regular recurring auto debits on some charitable giving that I postponed. I talked to them. They understood, so that I'm gonna catch back up later, but I needed to make sure that we had the cash flow. And so if you haven't done that, if you haven't talked to your vendors and either gotten terms or figured out how you're going to do that, this is absolutely the time right now. You need to do that while you're dark, before you're about to open back up.
Yeah, and I'm gonna bump you up on the timeline here, because this is really timely information, and we'll get this pushed out certainly this week, maybe in the next day or two. Well, everything that you're telling me, and this is a plug for all attorneys and CPA, an unapologetic plug for all attorneys and CPAs out there and financial advisors, is don't do this alone. I've relied on all of these professionals during this time to guide me through this process, because I haven't been through it before and they haven't been through it before. And so we may as well do it together. We're all doing this together. But what you guys know is you're keeping up with the current law, which changes seemingly every week, maybe sometimes every day. And it is your obligation to do that as a licensed professional. It's the CPA's obligation to do that, to provide advice ethically, and to ensure that you limit your liability as a business owner, as an employer. And so that's what I'm telling people is, yeah, read Google and watch the president's task force and everything like that. But if you're not consulting with professionals right here, it could be the difference between you having 20,000 forgiven and 500,000 forgiven, or from discriminating against an employee for not rehiring them without you knowing, right? Because you're picking and choosing who you're bringing back in. Like, there's so many things to think about.
And let me also add, have some grace if we don't have the answer, because so many of these phone calls end with, I will tell you as soon as I know something. Now, I got a call at home yesterday and it was, any updates on this PPP nonsense? Anything that you can tell me? Fishing for some bit of just good news. And I said, I don't have anything new. Not anything new since Thursday or Friday. But I promise you, one of the things that one of my pivots is I learned how to use MailChimp. And I was never a fan of sort of a mass email blast. I had never done it before. But at the beginning of this, I put 400 email addresses into a MailChimp and have been regularly sending out updates. And some of the feedback that I'm getting from our clients is, I'm so busy, not regularly watching the news. This is the only way I'm getting information.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I certainly didn't expect that I would be the conduit of, okay, you have to post this in the window now. It just came from the mayor, or it just came from the county health department, or it just came from the governor, or it just came from the president. Like, that's not ever been my role. And I'm repackaging a lot of the material that's created by the Texas Restaurant Association or banks or other thing. And I'm just sort of trying to be a repository of that and shoot it out. I've had to create a couple that said, please read this one all the way to the bottom. I know you guys are proclivity is to see a lot of words and keep on trucking.
Yeah. But I'll tell you, I read every single one of those emails, and it's something that I've appreciated, because even if it doesn't have to be original content. In fact, it's better if it's just curated, summarized, and specific to me in the hospitality business. That's extremely valuable. If we have any viewers or listeners that are in hospitality, especially in restaurants, but restaurant, hotel, barbershops, it's all pretty much the same information. And if you're not in the restaurant business, and David's talking about curbside delivery laws, or TABC, we're all consumers of those products. So it's good for me to know I can't buy a 1.75 of Jack Daniels at the restaurant. You know, I can buy the 375 milliliter. That's helpful for me just as a consumer.
The crazy thing is, there's no limit on the number you can buy. So they won't let you sell a full bottle, but you can sell 4 half bottles. I don't know.
Interesting. Okay, so that's new information for me.
No limit. I from the horse's mouth, from TABC enforcement. I checked because somebody wanted me to, but I'm really glad you're reading that. I'm really glad that it's helpful. It makes me feel like I'm actually doing something productive instead of just giving people bad news. But you know, it's been I mean, just like everybody else, it's been the worst time of my career, and everyone else's worst time of their career. It's been the worst month of my life, and everybody else's worst month of their life too. And so there's no time for a pity party. Although I will confess that at the end of most days, I am a little bit jealous of people that don't have a lot to do during the day. And I feel, because I know that people are like, I'm going to write that book I was going to write, or I'm going to work out every day, or I'm going to do this or that, right? And so some people are actually executing on the quarantine betterment of self program. And I find myself jealous of that. And then I talk to them and they're like, oh my God, I just wish I was busy again. I just wish I had something to do. The grass is totally greener, you know? And then I feel guilty because I'm super busy. And again, like, so much of this is industry specific. It can possibly be build to any one client. And it's just, if this industry goes under, we are going under. If our clients don't come back, this firm will not exist. And I don't know what that looks like. And I haven't really taken the time to wallow in that, because I've been accused of being overly positive. I've been accused of being unrealistic. Somebody called me Pollyanna a couple of weeks ago, which but a young guy, like
right.
Grandma used to say that. But I don't know any other way to be. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. So my pivot for personally is, I'm not despairing. I haven't gone to my default setting, which is to see the doom and gloom. My default setting usually is, oh man, this is going to be bad. But now we're going to all learn so much amazing stuff. And it doesn't mean that it isn't going to hurt. So yesterday, the sermon at church was on James 1, which is, consider it all joy when you encounter trials, because the testing of your faith produces endurance and perseverance, right? That was an accident. They preached that yesterday. They did it because every single person in the world, maybe, but America for sure, is going through this trial in some way or another. And I see what we're doing, and then I see the overhead shot of 10,000 cars in line in San Antonio for the food bank, and I think there is a whole other side of this that we're not seeing. And that kind of image, those images, Pittsburgh, San Antonio, lines for the food bank, that's real. And that's real suffering. And that's a real trial. That's more than just, I'm busy and nobody can pay me, or nobody appreciates how hard I'm working, or that's not a trial. A trial is, how am I going to feed my family? I'm going to sit in this car for a few hours to try to get food.
Yeah.
Happening.
Well, there's necessity right now, and there's necessity is a mother of an invention or of innovation or insert the word in there. But I think what you're saying, how it hits home with me is, it is necessary to save the restaurant industry. It is necessary to feed our families and feed the people at the food bank. And so there's just not a choice. We don't have the luxury of choosing whether to work right now or not, when we have the ability. We have gifts, we have knowledge, we have experience, we have legal designations to help people. It's just like, that's just what we're going to do, because that's what's needed right now.
Right. It's not a choice. And we're not looking for a government bailout, because the hospitality industry didn't do this to itself. It's not 2008 when the banks made bad choices and got a bailout. This is, you have to go dark because we're making you go dark. And when the government, my personal philosophy is, when the government tells you have to close, they owe it to you to reopen you back up. It's not a bailout. It's just turning the lights back on. And that's different. And so so when I see $25 billion specifically allocated to the airline industry, which has unquestionably been hit hard, staggeringly hard, but the hospitality industry employs 15 times more employees in the airline industry, and there's no specific carve out for that, that makes me frustrated. And it makes the hundreds of people that I'm talking to frustrated. And then they call me and say, why did the airlines get a bailout? Why didn't X, Y, and Z happen in Washington? I'm like, man, I'm just sitting here in my office. I'm not writing policy. So let's figure it out together. I mean, if there's no $25 billion specifically being allocated for, or 100 or 200 or whatever it has to be, it needs to be somewhere in the probably $250 billion range. If it's not there, then what can we do today, tomorrow, and next week to survive? Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you working so hard on making stuff happen there. And you just gave me a good idea, pivot in my business. The Gents place is going to be called the Gents Airlines.
Right.
From now. Will that help me get funding?
So I heard a story. This is the ultimate pivot, of a guy in, I think it was Prescott, Arizona, an older veteran. He had a store, just sort of a curio store. It sold Navajo rugs and trinkets and sort of knickknacks, and it got closed down, and it was his entire source of income. So he went down to City Hall and he changed the certificate of occupancy on his business so that he could sell hay. And then he started selling hay so he could stay open, because what else are you going to do?
So I love it.
So if you are not allowed by the government to do that thing that you do, and you don't want to be one of the, you don't want to be in the soup line, and you have to work, and you don't know any other way to be, you find a way to sell something that people need.
Yeah.
And it was on the essential list. And he said, I'm gonna sell hay. That's what we're doing. And maybe it's on the side. I don't know, but
I love it. I love it. All right.
100% switch.
We're going to end it with that story. I may be in the airline business or the selling hay business. I'm going to call my friendly attorney, David Denney, and have him help me out with that. Hey, man, thank you so much for hopping on with me. I know you're busy and getting phone calls all the time. If you want to come hang with me at the Gents Place in Uptown, I got a member lounge here. We have to stay, of course, 6 feet apart, but you can come hang anytime.
That's where I get my services done. That's my space.
Yeah. Well, we'll see you soon, buddy. Thank you so much for hopping on.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Ben. Keep doing it.
All right, man. Thanks, man. See ya.